I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z entrepreneur Brandon Amoroso, founder and CEO of e-com agency Electriq. Today, I'm talking with Zac Brandenberg, co-founder and CEO of Drinks, the online leader in adult beverage, who pioneered the world's first wine as a service platform and is now the parent company of Electriq. It's great to have you here, Zac.
Hey, Brandon, I appreciate that. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So before we dive into things, could you give everybody just a quick overview and background about your history and how you got into e-com and entrepreneurship?
Sure, it'd be a pleasure. So I've been in technology for, I'd say, the better part of the last 20 years. Started a ad platform back in 2003 called Hydra in Los Angeles. It was one of the earliest online ad tech businesses, really focused around performance marketing. So that was back when really you were still bracketing impression-based media, buying on CPM, click-based media, obviously buying on a CPC, Overture in Google, and then cost per action or CPA. Grew Hydra into one of the largest ad tech businesses and the fastest growing, and sold that company in 2010. Coming out of that, we started Drinks with a few of the co-founders I had, or a few of my co-founders rather, were partners of mine who had been with me for the last 10 years at that time. And we started Drinks in 2013 with the idea of applying our experience in advertising technology and e-commerce to the alcohol industry. One of the last, really enormous product categories that had seen no digital transformation.
And then can you talk a little bit about the evolution of Drinks from when it first started to where we are today?
Yeah, that's really a great story because it's been close to 9 years now, which is in some ways a long time for a startup technology business. But on the other hand, it's really a very small period of time in this industry being beverage alcohol, which again is a space that is really large, about a $250 billion industry across beer, distilled spirits, and wine, but one that has seen very little adoption of anything new or evolution since really the end of the Prohibition era back in the 1930s. So when we started Drinks, our focus was really on making wine. We chose one of the product categories easier to buy. And we started with a direct-to-consumer slant. We acquired two D2C businesses, one in 2013 and one in 2014. The business in 2014 was called Wine Insiders, which had actually been one of the pioneers of direct-to-consumer wine going back to 1982. That was back in the days, obviously, before the internet, when they advertised in the back of local newspapers and brought in wine from Napa and delivered it in taxi cabs to local residents in the Chicagoland area. So it's got great history. And so when we bought that business in 2014, we merged our other direct-to-consumer website underneath it and began growing it, focusing on traditional direct-to-consumer tenants, curation, convenience, and value. A small but distinctively relevant product set, the convenience of having the product delivered to your door, the value of having it sourced directly and cutting out the layers in between. Very similar to what you've seen with proof points and successes of businesses like Warby Parker or Allbirds or others, where they're finding something relevant and bringing you value that you don't get through the traditional retail environment. As we built out that direct-to-consumer side of the business, the underlying technology we were developing to power compliance and tax, which is really critically important in beverage alcohol, which is a heavily regulated industry, merchandising systems, data profiles, warehouse management, integrations, et cetera, enabled us to launch what we now stylize as our enterprise or wine as a service unit in 2018. And that's a plug-and-play solution for currently enterprises as big as Kroger and Sam's Club to Instacart and Thrive Market and others to be able to plug in and offer wine directly to their consumers without having to build out the operational infrastructure to be able to power nationwide e-commerce.
I think that's what makes the beverage alcohol space so unique and even more sort of entrenched than something like a Warby Parker, is how complicated and complex the regulatory environment is on a state-by-state basis. And it's probably the reason why nobody has attempted to do something like this, because it's not simple. It's very complicated and challenging.
It's very complicated. Yeah, it's very complicated, but it's compounded by a multitude of issues. Not only do you have heavy regulation, which is federal and state, and in some cases at the local level for the sale or the transit of beverage alcohol. And that can then be further broken out into what is legally permissible with wine versus what's legally permissible with beer versus distilled spirits, and whether the product is produced in the United States or it's coming from outside the United States. But you have an industry that, when you compare it to others, like you mentioned shoes, for example, or shoes, Allbirds, or eyeglasses, i.e. with Warby Parker, you have an industry that is heavily fragmented, meaning there are so many players. Just when you're talking about the producer level, 10,000 wineries, more than 10,000 wineries in the United States. You have a tremendous retailer population, tens of thousands of retail locations, each cornering a small percentage of sales, or in some case, a large percentage of sales. And you have an entrenched market environment where the participants in beverage alcohol are ones that usually have been selling or active in the industry for years and can be protected by both market forces and laws themselves that give them a position that makes them hard to disintermediate and therefore resistant to change. Because if you have if you exist in a protectionist environment, you really have no motivation to want to innovate because your market position is already safe. So change can be scary because change could mean something's going to be different for you that is in some way going to represent an opportunity for someone else.
Yeah, and if you don't have necessarily as much competition in that particular industry, then there isn't as much incentive to innovate when there's no reason to.
That's exactly correct. You know, who wants to force change? You got to look at who the players are and whether or not they really want change. The consumer usually does. The consumer wants something that is better for them, whether it's something that's more convenient or a better price or a better selection or an easy or shopping experience with less friction. But that doesn't mean that the sellers, the retailers, or the supply chain are necessarily interested in providing that in every single case.
It reminds me of one of my high school internships at the paper company, that there's only 3 of them in the world, and there's really no incentive whatsoever for them to do anything, because apparently it costs like $1 billion to build a new paper mill. So who the hell is going to build a new paper mill anytime soon?
Yeah, that's a space you're likely not to see a lot of change in.
You know, I saw direct-to-consumer toilet paper a couple of days ago, so maybe I could start a direct-to-consumer printing paper company. That'll be the next gig. So
sounds like a heavy product to ship.
So I want to talk a little bit about sort of the history of our partnership together and why you thought there was an opportunity here to sort of merge and combine forces to create not only a larger but better and more efficient entity together.
Yeah, so I think you might be better than I to confirm how long Drinks has been working with your business before the acquisition, but I think it's been close to inception. And you know, from that point, we at Drinks have been working to diversify and support our internal marketing resources with obviously valuable external resources. And so Drinks have been working with Electriq in support of its direct-to-consumer properties, Wine Insiders and capsule collections with outside influencers and celebrities to broaden the social media presence and amplify growth. Over time, you know, as we've been developing our enterprise business further and expanding our integrations, we've been seeing the opportunity to power more and more Shopify hosted retailers, brands, and merchants in general. And as your business has gone in the direction, at least from what I've seen, to grow outside of, let's say, social and influencer marketing and traditional growth marketing to specialize in the Shopify ecosystem, we saw a real opportunity to combine to bring more of that expertise in-house and really amplify and accelerate the activities of our partners, current and prospective, that are operating within the expansive Shopify ecosystem.
And I think the ability with Shopify to be able to do so many things from a marketing perspective that historically have been withheld or just not accessible to companies in the wine in spirit space and beer as well, is really a shame because of how much storytelling and unique sort of every single winery I've been to in the US has some sort of a unique spin on it, whether it's 300 years of family history or a special way that they do the grapes. There's so many ways to slice and dice your way to the same end product in the bottle. And without being able to have like a sophisticated digital presence, it's very difficult to get that across unless you're in the tasting room. And not everybody can be in the tasting room. Not everybody lives in Napa, or not everybody lives in Oregon. And so this is super exciting for us and our team to be able to take what we've been doing for all the other Shopify types of brands, from consumables to skincare and beauty to traditional retail, and mirror that same sort of proficiency and innovation in a space that has not had it historically.
Yep, that's exactly correct. We see the same thing. The opportunity of a technology platform like Shopify to enable a merchant ecosystem like the wineries, all these producers whose specialty is really not in direct to consumer sales, and certainly not in e-commerce, but really in the production, the care and cultivation of their product, from, it's the old expression, going from grape to glass, is really where they've been able to lean in. But they've been underserved, to use a beverage alcohol pun, by the technology solutions that are out there. And there's a real opportunity for them to create better, closer consumer relationships, which have so many benefits for wineries themselves and for merchants in general. Not only do you start to engage directly with your customers, your fans, your loyalists, and therefore get that direct engagement and that feedback and that first party customer data, but you also get to open up a sales channel where you're not reliant on whatever the broader market is providing to you. And that may be limited in many cases by whatever market forces are. And most of these direct opportunities carry, or most of these direct to consumer opportunities carry the opportunity for higher profit margins as well, because you don't have the layers that are involved in a traditional environment of bringing your product through wholesale channels, through whatever distribution is provided. Beverage alcohol has a very regimented structure there versus, let's say, other product categories, and then to the end consumer.
And the ability to create a real relationship with your customer as well, and not be completely blind to who the consumer is when you're limited to only going through your retail outlets. Like with Shopify, part of what we focus on with all of our brands is how can we take that first party and zero party data that we're aggregating to create these very personalized customer experiences. And that's something that is just not possible in retail, obviously. And I think there's a lot of value there for a winery to be able to test products into markets online before necessarily going into their traditional distribution channels. And now they're armed with some data like, hey, we have 5,000 people in this particular region who love this new rosé in a can or whatever it may be. And then taking that out to their distribution channels and showing them that there is that demand in that particular market.
Yes, absolutely. I think it provides them tremendous additional value.
And really where I think this makes the most sense is that, like, you all are obviously the experts in the alcohol space. You've been doing it for 9 years, but a lot of your team members have been doing it for 30 plus years. And there's so much intrinsic value in that knowledge. And I can't even begin to unravel how complex the layers are at a state by state level, not even touching on, like how you said, depending on where the wine comes from, how it's produced, what sort of license structure you have. The whole thing is crazy to me. But then on our end, we've been sort of so deep in the Shopify ecosystem for the last 3 to 4 years, marrying the two together is going to be able to produce substantial results. And I've already begun to see over the past 6 weeks the benefits of combining the two and being able to play off of one another's strengths and pick up where maybe we have weaknesses as well.
That is exactly correct. And we felt the same way. That's one of the things that we saw, early on, just in the working relationship we had with you and your team, and the value that you were able to provide us, and the value we saw the Electriq organization providing its clients, that an integration would enable us to, I'll use the same word again, amplify the efforts of both of us and expand them outside of what was individually able to be accomplished.
So I know we've been talking around it a little bit, but can we dig into what is coming with Shopify and what this means for the future of the wine industry?
Yeah, sure. A formal announcement is to be forthcoming, of course, as we get out of some of the initial testing and beta phase we're in right now. But we've been working behind the scenes for some time to take one of the modules, if you will, of our wine as a service enterprise solution, the same platform that we're using to power the wine shop on the Instacart marketplace, the wine category for Thrive Market, the wine category for Misfits Markets, Misfits Market, the ship to home wine business for Sam's Club. And we have built a tax and compliance module, an app, the drinks app for Shopify, so that wineries specifically, so the producer ecosystem in beverage alcohol, is able to have embedded real-time tax and compliance within the shopping cart and within the checkout engine. And that's a significant step forward for beverage alcohol merchants. By merchants, I mean producers in this case, and is going to enable them to have the same, best-in-class e-commerce solution that exists for everyone else in e-commerce, that being what Shopify provides, with best-in-class regulatory technology, all in a seamless fashion. And we feel that represents, a baseline of table stakes for these producers, where this is something really they always should have, but they've been, there have been less than stellar technology solutions presented to alcohol merchants for some time, for reasons that are really hard to understand considering the magnitude of the industry opportunity. And it's going to enable them to really focus on using the benefits of Shopify and the app ecosystem to grow their business now that they know they can do so in a compliant fashion.
I think it really comes out fundamentally trying to create Shopify for wine versus building what wineries need on top of Shopify is why it's so difficult for the current sort of winery tech stack to be able to innovate, because you don't get any of the platform benefits of this massive platform like Shopify, where you have quite literally any MarTech tool for e-commerce builds for Shopify first and foremost before they think about doing anything else. There's no startup app for email and SMS marketing, or order tracking management, or upsells in cart, or whatever it may be, that's going out and saying, actually, first we're going to build for this very specific point solution of e-commerce for wineries. Whereas what we're doing here is plugging into an ecosystem that has already been developing and building for the last 11 years. And so now wineries can tap into all those best-in-class technologies, but finally they have the ability to sell in a compliant manner and taking out all the headache of everything that they've been doing in the past.
Yes, which is, it's hard to underscore how critically important that is, because in most cases, you have wineries or others who've been using, some have been using, let's say, industry grade enterprise level technology platforms like customized Magento systems, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, et cetera. And then you have a variety of other off-the-shelf tool sets or whatnot that have provided e-commerce services to this industry. But in almost every case, you have intense customization required to build in the necessary tax and compliance features, which are different, amazingly. That the tax is different for beverage alcohol than it is for other products. And certainly the compliance requirements are significantly different, because there are compliance requirements. It's not like you can sell toilet paper to all 50 states or coffee and it's just super easy. And all these mandatory, or not mandatory, all these individual customizations have had to be incorporated into these e-commerce solutions or resolved after the fact. So you have a merchant ecosystem out there that's been able to perhaps conduct transactions, but then they have to clean things up later with proper tax calculations and figuring out if they can really ship orders to customers who ordered, because their systems were not able to filter out what was product that was legally allowed to sell or what was product they wanted to sell. And that's just, it's hard to say it in a more colloquial fashion. It's just crazy to me that there hasn't been a tight solution for this industry, because it does have unique needs, but it has enormous opportunity because the percentage of alcohol bought online today is such a small fraction of the overall industry, partially because of the regulatory framework that's existed that's made it hard to sell and hard to necessarily ship, but also because the technology ecosystem has not been brought to bear for this industry.
That's amazing to me how some brands that are pretty sizable and you would recognize them if you saw them don't even have a direct to consumer presence because it's not worth the headache that they have to go through to deal with the sort of the kludgy patchwork solutions that need to be put together. I was speaking with e-commerce manager for one of the wineries that was at ProWine, and she was telling me how she has this like 50-page document that basically goes through, here are all the workarounds that I have put together to make certain things work from a marketing perspective on our e-commerce platform. And frankly, it was just horrifying to even hear that because I'm so used to just being able to ideate and then immediately go and execute with an ecosystem that has 9,000 apps or whatever it's at right now.
Yeah, it's terrible to see the immense struggles and overhead that these producers are encountering because they haven't had a solution available to them. I mean, for us at Drinks, when we started, again, back in 13 and 14 on the direct-to-consumer side, we did not use a third-party e-com platform. We built our own homegrown solution. And now this was certainly before Shopify had reached the size and scale that it has today with the broad ecosystem that it has. But even so, we recognize that the need for utterly tight regulatory compliance was one that we were really just going to have to build ourselves. And that became the foundation of what is now the Drinks app. We've been doing this for ourselves for some time and taking this technology, again, I refer to it as module because it's really only one part of our larger wine as a service engine. But we took this module that we built to power our own direct-to-consumer presence, able to service customers across the United States, further enabled it for all the customizations or unique characteristics of retailers or marketplaces or other brands, and have now been able to integrate it directly into Shopify for the use of wine producers.
And every time I speak with a winery, it just reinforces the opportunity there. I'm pretty sure, and I was actually shocked by this, the level of knowledge that everyone I've spoken to has about Shopify is much more than I would have thought that I originally thought it was going to be. Because they've wanted to move over. Like there's no debate around whether Shopify is the right solution from an e-commerce platform standpoint for these wineries. It's just been, we can't make it work. We can't do it because it doesn't allow us to do what we need to do from a tax and compliance standpoint.
Yep.
And you see some wineries currently selling on Shopify, but they're either smaller or there's some sort of a workaround solution going on there in the back end, and it's not scalable whatsoever. So it really is, I think, a watershed moment for the industry. And we're going to see so many more direct-to-consumer brands popping up as a byproduct of this ease to go to market versus historically what it's been.
I absolutely agree.
So where do you see the future of direct-to-consumer going for the wine industry? Like once this Shopify app becomes public and it's very simple for wineries to get up and running with their own direct-to-consumer storefronts, how do you see things shaking out over the next 5 to 10 years?
I would say it's going to start with, really massive and step function up of growth of what the wineries are able to do with online commerce, which has been growing for them. I mean, all of the statistics and reports, even before COVID brought a tailwind to everything D2C and everything e-com in general, you could see more and more wine was being bought direct to consumer, direct from wineries and online. And that was before that ecosystem has been served with top tier technology solutions. As that's brought to bear, you're going to really see their ability to start growing because it's not just going to be about initial implementation, just get a website and getting going, but it's going to be a situation where now that they have that basic infrastructure in place, they're going to be able to capitalize on all of the marketing and technology apps that are available to them and start to grow their customer base, expand that relationship with their customers because they're going to have a less frictionful experience and really be able to expand the business that they're doing direct and the business they're doing online. I mean, in general, if you look larger at direct to consumer, I think you're going to see an increasing need for quality D2C businesses. It's been very easy to launch anything direct to consumer over the last few years, and certainly advertising has been relatively inexpensive and relatively efficient for these D2C marketers. But that's obviously changed with the various ad network changes and the privacy changes that Apple has made, which has made it more difficult for these businesses to grow and acquire customers. I think in some ways, while that can be seen as bad at a macro level, I think it makes the quality of the product even more important. And that's somewhere that, wine producers are going to shine, because they're able to sell based on what they're actually fulfilling, what they're actually bringing to market, not on games or gimmicks or tricks or, some sort of shiny marketing object at the front end with a, less than fantastic product on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen so many crazy landing page funnels that are really stellar at getting you to make that first purchase. And then I just don't think they give a shit what happens to you as a customer after that first order, because it is a less than stellar experience for sure. But I think it's not like the customers are going anywhere. Like, people are still purchasing, they're still purchasing online. You just can't turn on a Facebook ad now and expect to turn into a $100 million direct consumer brand overnight, like it feels like you maybe could have done 5 years ago. And wineries are uniquely positioned, the ones that have tasting rooms, to be able to use that sort of as their customer acquisition funnel because of how large of an industry wine tourism is. But now they can nurture and create a relationship that lasts over 30 years versus just that moment in time at the tasting room, because they have the ability to connect what happens in their store environment as well as what happens online, and to continue that relationship after the person leaves California or Oregon or whatever it may be.
Yep, that's exactly correct.
And what excites me is the ability to educate, because moving them over to Shopify is sort of table stakes. Like, this is sort of known, it needs to happen, let's just get it done. But where I'm really excited to jump in with them is to showcase the power of the ecosystem and how they'll be able to extend their e-commerce storefronts now because of the fact that they're on Shopify. How do we utilize loyalty programs to create a unique customer experience? How do we utilize reviews to make people be able to better choose their wine selection? Because, I don't know, Joe from Texas likes this sort of flavor profile, and he was really interested in this particular Pinot from this producer. All of that information, being able to harness it and then use it to create a better customer experience, it's going to be really fun. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, it's tremendous market opportunity. It just needs to start, as everything has to, with, you have to have your base platform in place. And now I think that that's more easily available to wine producers. You're going to see them really be able to take advantage of that and grow.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I think we'll have to do this again in a couple of months once we have a few examples to run through and showcase what's happened here. But before we hop off, where can folks find you online?
Easiest contact information for me is at drinks.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, as always, this is Brandon Amoroso. You can find me at brandonamoroso.com or at electriqmarketing.com. Thanks for listening in, and we'll see you next time.
Great. I appreciate your time, Brandon. Thanks.